Let's talk about tribal cores in Wecross. What is a tribal core? Well, a tribal core is a tribe, which is a specific type of signi that you can use all together. For example, all the Venom signis or all the Brave signis. And tribal is when you try to play multiple of the same type for a gain greater than playing a normal signi. Now, I want to take a moment just to explain this a little bit in depth. Now, tribal core makes sense a lot as a player. You just play a bunch of cards that are in the same tribe. Cool. That has a lot of cool flavor reasons to do it. Angels is a cool deck just because you're seeing multiple angels. Demons is a cool deck because they seem to play well together, and you're also seeing a same type of artwork often over and over again. And there's a lot of thematic things where people like to project their feelings on certain tribes and like, oh yeah, no, I love space, so that's why I love playing Cosmos Signy. However, when we're talking about a game, it's important to recognize that if you take a lot of cards from the same tribe and you put them together and you try your best to make a deck out of it, a lot of the times it will fail as a deck. And that is because the reason to play a tribe is not, at least from a game perspective, is to not do it simply because the tribe is cool. That's absolutely a fine reason to play that tribe, but if you're trying to win, that doesn't necessarily mean that playing the tribe is a good choice. You need to have something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And tribal actually gives you access to that. It is a restriction. You can only use a much smaller card pool in order to play a better version of the deck, but you want to have enablers and payoffs in that deck. For example, if a tribe, such as, let's say, Brave, exists, and there's a Brave enabler, which it's a piece that allows you to um, gain enter. You get enter charging off of it. Um, does that play well with the Brave types? Well, the Brave types usually have a cost in order to do some removal on their side, but does that protect their attacking? No. Does it support you in doing removal? Probably not, because you can gain enter other ways. And does it make them really win the attack phase? Because that's what a Brave Signy is really like doing. And the answer is no, it doesn't. So it's not a good tribe yet. It may have new cards coming into the future. So we're going to go over tribes specifically in Wecross right now that have these enabler and payoffs in the support, that when you play them, you potentially gain, as a package, you gain something better than what you would normally. Let's talk about angels. So angels here are this one's specifically red white angels. Angels are spread across the entire color spectrum of Wecross, which means actually that they're a little less powerful than you'd think they would be, because they are sort of hit or miss with what they do. Right now, there's about two different types of angels that you can play. You can either play, in my opinion, white blue angels, or you can play white red angels, and they both do different things. And because the support is a little more spread out against all those colors, they become hit or miss as to whether or not you get something good. But I think Iris is a really, really good example of what the red white angels wants to do. If you read what the card does, it says, whenever this Signy attacks, if there are 3 or more different angels on your field, you may discard an angel Signy. If you do, vanish target Signy on your opponent's field with power 8,000 or less. So Hera is a really good card, but it costs an enter, and it also needs just a bunch of red Signies, right? So this has a different restriction, and it only vanishes 5,000. It can vanish 8,000 or less, which is a literal step in the right direction. It's one of the better versions of removal that you can do in red at the level 2 slot. It's actually better than most removals in red at the level 2 slot. However, its totally requirement is that you need to have 3 angels when you do your attack, which is a difficult requirement to do. The support for red white angels is literally as simple as just fill your deck with angels. The red white angels wants to see angels in the top of your deck, and they also want to see angels in the field, occasionally seeing some amount of angels in the trash. The payoff, however, is you get a lot of removal and you get a lot of card draw. And you get, yes, you're saying, well, I'm playing white red, I get card draw and removal already by playing white red. You get better card draw and better removal. Looking at the core here, this is what I would be playing, or at least looking to play, if I was going into Red White Angels. The Haniel gives you a lot of ways to specifically get a guard, but also can help you find your enabler pieces that you need to keep winning this game. Iris, Himera is a new one. These are all just basically upgrades to staples that we already have. Iris is an upgrade to Hera. And then Himera is an upgrade to what is it called? Ramel. Where it's able to do the Ramel thing perfectly fine if there's 2 or more angels on your field, banish something with 3,000 or less. And if there are 3 or more angels on your field, you can banish 5,000 or less. So it's literally a Lancelot at level 1 at that point. Archwain is just really good access to being able to filter, again, making sure you can get a card. And Exia is just one of the best cards that you can be playing for defensive board positioning in the format. So it's very strong on its own. So all of these build yourself a pretty good core. Right now, I believe, as it stands, because Hera is a little bit more difficult... Iris is a little bit more difficult to pull off than Hera. We're not exactly at the point where I'm super in love with Red White Angels, but if I see them against me, right, beforehand I would see Red White Angels played against me and I kind of just laugh it off and be like, this will be an easy win. Now I'm less inclined to do that. I'm going to treat it as an actual threat, because it is an actual threat and you need to know how to play around it. So Red White Angels, probably one of the better tribes that you can play. Not the best, but definitely one of the betters. The Blue White Angels, however, are less of a core and more of a package that you can put in your deck. The support is simply just by having a fair amount of angels in the deck. The payoff is really good deck filtering and deck discard, self-discard, which you might not consider as being a good payoff, because it does nothing to help you win the game, but it really can enable some wacky stuff and allow you to filter through your deck at a high rate and find the pieces that you need. Basically, the more that you have deck filtering, the more silver bullets you can play in your deck, because you're more likely to draw your threats that you need for any specific scenario. So it allows for a little bit more of toolboxing in the deck. And the self-discard can actually enable a lot of blue stuff on its own, namely Firefly Squid. And that's an option to do. So if we look at the angels that I'm suggesting here, you'll notice that this really helps you find all of the threats you need. Now, the amount that you need in order to pull this off is probably around 14 angels. So again, it doesn't need to be a full deck full of angels, whereas the red-white angels, basically you need probably around 32 red-white angels to function. This one, you only need about 14. And you could pretty easily do that with 4 Haniel, 4 Gagiel, some amount of Heket, probably about 3 to 4, and then Abdumala probably is about 2 to 4, and then Exia is probably a 4 of, and the Archwain is probably a 2 of, if not 0. You can do anywhere from 0 to 2. And that'll get you the number that you're looking for. Again, this gives you unparalleled deck filtering, so you can find any threat that you need to at any point in time, and enable a lot of self-discard strats as well. I've seen this a lot, actually, in the Japanese meta for decks that want to enable Firefly Squid as a choice. Moving right along, we can talk about Terra Beasts. The support for this that you need to enable your deck is just self-pump. Anytime you can power pump your Signy, you're going to find a lot of stuff with Terra Beasts being better off because of it. The card choice that I sort of think represents this as the best payoff is Buffalo. When you play another Terra Beast, this Signy and the Signy that entered get plus 4,000 power. And at the beginning of your attack phase, if any Signy on your field is 20k power, it gets the ability to pay 2 and you can vanish target Signy in front of it with power 12,000 or less. It's very strong. However, there's also some other payoffs that you get from running the Terra Beast package that you sometimes get normally in red and green, where this is primarily as well. And that would be that you get removal and you get enter, but you get card selection, which is a little a little different than in red and green. You don't normally get good card selection, but Terror Beasts do actually enable some amount of card selection. It also can give you some easier access to enter, since you're already in the Terror Beast. You don't have to play cards specifically to get you enter. They might just be a payoff for running Terror Beast stuff already, and you just get way better removal, right? Red can't normally vanish 12Ks or less. It also gives you a attack phase boost, which I didn't put in here, but your attack phase ends up being a lot better with stuff like this. The power pump is relevant against black decks, but also there's various Terra Beasts that, for example, say they can't be downed. So that is also an upside to running Terra Beasts. Here's the current Terra Beast package as it stands. You'll actually notice that all of these play really, really, really well with each other. Osagetsune is a very good removal, but is powered up by Fennec, who is able to then enter charge in order to allow you to do Osagetsune's abilities. Note that you need to have some form of pump to make. Oh, actually, no, sorry, it does it on its own. Excuse me, I forgot the 5,000 pump. So you are able to self pump with Fennec and then able to attack, enter charge, and then Osagetsune to do removal. Buffalo is also really good here because with Buffalo and Fennec, they both end up just playing Buffalo followed by Fennec. They both will end up attacking at the 20k power thresholds, meaning they both get the removal abilities. And then Tengu allows itself, if you are able to buff it in any form, let's say you do Buffalo, Tengu, and then Osagetsune, it will be able to get Assassin as well as just not being able to be downed by your opponent. I threw the multicolored on there because it's actually pretty important that this tribe has access to a multicolored as well. And that sets it apart from other tribes, for example. So you often find that the when the multicolor is accessible by the tribal signi, that the whole tribe gets better on its own. This tribe is currently playable, but isn't amazing. I think it becomes much better. I believe in set 6 there will be a red Terra Beast that allows you to bring Terra Beasts back from the trash, allowing you to toolbox and card select more with your Terra Beasts, which is why I said card selection is a thing that this deck can do. So I would suggest doing something like that, right? There's also some Terra Beasts, for what it's worth, that can pull cards out of your enter and put them into your hand, and that is also good for card selection. Moving right along into Atomic. The core for Atomic is pretty well known. What you need to do to support Atomic, though, that's less well known, is you need to add draw cards to your deck. The deck functions by discarding a lot of its hand, so you need to have draw cards in order to support it. The payoff is removal and defensive options. Defensive options are pretty rare to find in Wixoss. Aside from your Elrig deck, you can't really defend super easily. So the fact that, like, I think H2O is a really good example of this, it's just difficult to get rid of, right? Because the opponent will need to either kill it on your turn or minus its power in order to vanish it total, or do something like attack it and kill it. Let me just make sure. During the defense of your opponent's turn, one more card in the opponent's effect. Yeah. So, it is very good, but you also see that it shreds its own hand, right? So the draw 2 cards off of its own Lifeburst and put 1 Atom Signi into the play field is very good because it self-supports itself, but you need some amount of draw cards to make sure that you're not running on empty this entire time. But the defensiveness is very good for it. You're able to play out sort of very awkward positioning where the opponent is going to have to attack in a strange way, waste multiple resources on H2O, for example, or you hit H2O's Lifeburst and you're able to play one of these Atomic Signi that will allow you to have an enter effect that also removes another lane of Signi, allowing you to potentially block up to 2 lanes of damage for 1. So it's got very good defensive options, is what I'm trying to say, as a very strong payoff. This is your core. This is what you'll be running. This is probably one of the better cores that you can run for a deck, and it actually doesn't change much from deck to deck. I think some of it does. For example, Tamago will want to run ZR more than the Deus deck will. The Deus deck probably won't run any amount of ZRs. So you can play it a little bit, but also here you've got the multicolored. Like I said, more of the top decks run the multicolored signi, especially if they have the same signi type for this. So this is it. You're going to be able to discard your opponent's hands pretty easily. You're going to be able to add some good defensive stuff. And PA and BP are very, very, very good removal options at a low cost. But you'll need to have cards in hand to support it, so you might want to run some draw spells with it to support it. Moving right along into Cosmos. It's actually kind of interesting. Cosmos is the only deck that I can think of off the top of my head with support already pre-built into it. So the support is Paradise Universe. If you're not running Paradise Universe, you'll want to run some form of top deck manipulation. Cosmos really likes seeing level 1s at the top end of their decks. So you'll want to deck manipulate. Otherwise, if you don't, you'll want to run Paradise Universe. The downside with Paradise Universe is literally all level 2 and level 3 cards in your deck should be Cosmos, with very few exceptions, in order to enable it. But you get the upside of, and you do have to waste a piece on it, right? Like, this isn't the ability for Cosmos to be strong isn't inherently built in Cosmos itself right now. If there was ever Cosmos that would be printed that allow you to freely top deck manipulate, so you can always set yourself up for success, then maybe you don't need to run Paradise Universe. But right now, it is actually an upside here that you can waste one of your pieces and then just have your deck function always, period, from then on at 0 cost. Your payoff that you get is, if you're going with the top deck manipulation stuff, you get really good filtering. You probably get some good filtering regardless in this deck, and you get pretty incredible removal. I have to be honest with you, this is some of the strongest removal that you can be playing in Wixoss right now. And the core of it is actually quite interesting. So you'll see that I put 2 level 1s here, and one happens to be Cosmos, but realistically, you can play any level 1 you want. Because of Paradise Universe affecting all your level 2s and level 3s to be counted as a level 1, you don't need to play Cosmos level 1s. It just so happens that one of them, Alifard, is pretty good when you are also playing Paradise Universe, right? Whenever the Signi attacks, you can reveal a top card of your deck if that card is a level 1 Signi draw card. So as long as you're playing Cosmos as your level 2s and levels 3s, it basically says on attack draw a card, which is really good in aggressive decks. When you already have your lane openings, you can go ahead and play some of your level 1s. It's just, this is in an open lane, I'm attacking through and drawing a card. That just helps you, right? And then Haniel does the same thing. All of your level 2s and level 3s are going to be level 1s, so you can draw any card with a Haniel, not just guards, which is also pretty incredible. Then we get into what I really like about the deck, which is the level 2, level 3, level 3, and level 3 here. Kernita is an incredible Signy in the fact that it's basically Hera, but it's better than Hera. It is able to vanish target Signy on your opponent's field for 8,000 or less for colorless. And the only thing that it requires is basically that you play Paradise Universe. Eclipse also basically does the same deal. You pay 1 enter, and you can vanish something 10,000 or less, or give something negative 10,000. Draco will always trigger, and end up being that you can pay 1 colorless enter to vanish a thing that's 12,000 or less at level 3. And then Telescopium is going to almost always trigger as a level 5. It's almost always going to trigger with the trash being 10,000 or less. If it doesn't, that's fine too. You've got a bunch of other level 3s that your top end is pretty incredible. I would say the only issue with the Paradise Universe deck right now is that it kind of lacks access to another form of Lancelot that you probably want. So, for example, I would be probably trying to still fit in 2 Lancelot into this deck, even if that's all I could fit in. Um, it does not trigger off of Paradise Universe, but I think I'm willing to risk it to try to patch this up. And then I probably want to play some amount of Ramels as well into this, because you should just be playing whatever the best level ones are. And this Paradise Universe deck, Cosmos, feels to me that it has access to being a very, very, very good aggro deck, and something I would very consider using. Um, Plus, it's allowing you to draw cards, and I feel like that's all you want in an aggro deck, is drawing cards and refilling, and then having redundant lane opening. So I think this is a strong card, strong set on its own. Probably not necessarily the best tribal deck that you could be playing, but I think maybe it's the second best tribal deck that you can be currently playing right now. Demons is another one that you could be playing. Demons is also one of the ones that are unique, that you have access to a pretty good ability that demons want from the Elrig deck. I know that, for example, angels also have access to something, but it's less good. Devil's Carnival is difficult requirement to pull off successfully. But then you gain access to the ability of just drawing a card at the end of every turn. This is really strong on its own. It just allows you to probably play the long game better off than most decks can, which is why you probably end up as a mid-range deck or a control deck if you're playing demons, at least right now as it stands. This is the best payoff that you could be doing. The support for it would be mill or self-discard, and you're also going to need some amount of sacrifice fodder. It's a little mad in the fact that it is like in D&D, mad attribute is multiple attribute dysfunction, I think is what it's called, or that you want to cover a lot of bases with this, so it makes it a little harder to pay it off. But the payoff is that you get unparalleled trash recursion, which is, again, quite strong. And again, you get that card at the end of your turn. So here's the current makeup of the demon deck. So you'll see that it's in colors that you wouldn't expect, right? Like, we have 4 colors presented here, but realistically, the most important color for a demon deck is white. I know that's a little out of flavor, but that's what it is. And the reason why is because these 2 level 1s right here, which is that you can discard a card, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a demon from among them, add it to your hand in any order. Or the other one, which is pay and enter, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal a demon among them, add it to your hand. So Devil's Carnival, you need to put 2 demon signi from your field into the trash. If you do, you gain the following ability for the rest of the game. At the end of your turn, add target demon from your trash to your hand. It means that you're going to need to, on turn 1, where you're trying to enable it so that you can get the most payoff for this, you're going to need to put demons from the field into the trash, which means that you need to have a lot of level 1 demons. Probably all of your level 1s need to be demons. These demons find other level 1 demons. So you can play some amount of these level 1 demons on your turn 1, sacrifice both of them, so you enable your Devil's Carnival for the rest of your game, and then you go ahead and use the other level 1 demons that you just found to replay, so you're not letting the opponent get free damage against you. With that being said, one of the best level 1 demons that you can sacrifice at this moment is Vasigo, Jade Evil, which, when it goes to from the field into the trash by one of your costs or effects, which would be Devil's Carnival, you own that effect, you get to enter charge 1. It also pumps one of your signi. That doesn't really matter too much. It does also mill yourself 1, which actually does help with the Devil's Carnival. It might enable something for Devil's Carnival that you might want off of that instead of bringing back the Vasco. Outside of that, right, I do think that you probably need to be playing green and white right now to be playing a successful Demons deck, just because I think that is the good trick on its own to be playing the combo that you're looking for. whether or not you want to go into blue or you want to go into black is your choice. You get different types of attributes if you do one versus the other. If you go into blue, you gain access to basically running Nova, and then you can potentially be a control deck. Or Tamago, and you can potentially be a control deck. You also gain access to Folklore, which allows you to play a lot more defensively because you got the Folklore Lifeburst, plus a level 2 10k that you can recur every turn is pretty good defensively. You also get access to Fenrir. Now, Fenrir will freeze your opponent's stuff and also make the opponent discard cards. Very, very good in a control matchup or if you're playing the long game. But the cool thing is if it dies or you enter charge it and then you use that enter, at the end of your turn you can bring back the Fenrir again and you can loop Fenrirs. And let me tell you, there's nothing more disgusting for your opponent than to lock them out of the game completely just by freezing everything and just going ahead and looping Fenrirs, making sure they have no cards in hand as well. You could also go into black. If you go into black, you end up in a more of a mid-range strategy, and you can run Paimon, which is whenever the Signi attacks, you can trash one of your own Signis. If you do, you can give something negative 5,000 till end of turn. It's not the greatest hair in the world, but if you're planning on doing some kind of like Madoka Clap or an MC Lion Disrespect already, then you don't really care that there's an open thing. You just care that you've opened up your own thing. And you can recur Animirages. Now, Animirages is one of the cooler devils to be playing because, one, it's just removal constantly on its own, so it's basically like recurring a removal spell. But also, when you enter or Animirage is vanished, because it's a Rise Signy, whatever it's on top of will go to the trash, meaning that you could have put that on top of something like, for example, your Equil. Use your Equil's ability, put something in your hand, put the Animirage on top of it. Animirage gets vanished or gets trashed, and then you'll end up putting the Equil into the trash because of the Rise effect, meaning that you have access to it again with Devil's Carnival, so you can reuse it. Maybe you're doing that with a Fenrir, for example, or something. So it's a cool option that you can do with Rise, and just something worth mentioning, even if it's more of a minor thing that you can do. I spent a long time on Devils. Devils don't have a super great core as of yet. They've been spread across, also like Angels, multiple colors, so they haven't really centralized in one specific thing that could really work. If that Vasigo, for example, was black, we'd have a very strong core, but it's not, it's green. So, figure out what kind of colors you want to go with. Again, you can go with the white, blue, green version. You could end up in a more of a control deck. You can go with a white, green, black version, end up more mid-range. You can go with the white, blue, black version, and you'll end up in sort of a much slower mid-range. The last one that we'll talk about is Virtual. It's still around. It's still kicking. I don't know if it's fantastic, but you can play this as a deck or as a package. You could choose one or the other. Not everything needs to be a core. The support for Virtuals is that you want to have self-mill or self-discard. Either one of those will work and enable some more Virtual stuff. The payoff is you get a lot of trash recursion and a bunch of modular minus effects. So if you don't like math, don't play Virtual. It allows you to have unparalleled trash recursion. And I think Reina is the best Virtual card that exists. And I still think it's very strong on its own. Basically giving the ability to negative 5,000 power something and follow it up with 3 instances of negative 3,000, so you get negative 8,000, negative 3,000, negative 3,000 is very, very, very strong. You also get a cool Lifeburst, which is you can add 2 Virtual Signi from your trash to your hand. I wish that ability was add 1 Virtual Signi from your trash to your hand, put 1 into play, or something like that. I think the Virtual deck would be much better if it had that Lifeburst. But I will say that the Virtual decks never run out of cards. Even if you are a discard deck, you just can never discard them out because of how much trash recursion they have. The core of the deck will end up being this. You'll want to play Reina, which allows a lot of multiple negative effects. Then you'll want to play 4 Fuyuki and 4 Melissa. After that, you can choose whatever virtuals you want to add to your package. There is worth mentioning, there's a white-black virtual, so if you're playing in white-black, you can play some multicolored as well. And you can run this as a package. If you decide to run just Reina, Fuyuki, and Melissa, you're looking at running 12 cards on their own right there. Sorry, 9 cards. Wait, 12 cards. 3 times 4 is 12. And I think you'll need to run probably about 4 more virtuals in order to make it good. Luckily, there's a few good Lifeburst level 2 virtuals, or you could run the multicolored virtuals, which end up being a pretty good package. You want to have some amount of trash recursion if you're going to do that. So like a Deus deck or a Musica deck could run this pretty easily, basically a black center. If you decide to go with the deck itself, you'll probably want to go with the Toko, which can add even more trash recursion and even more negative effects to spread out. And you'll probably want to run Lulu because you are running so many self-trashing effects that having the ability to basically just not die to Life Cloth Refresh, which, by the way, is a very strong thing. There's a lot of blue and black decks now that are trying to mill the opponent out for at least 1 damage. Lulu allows you to mill yourself out and then basically say, yeah, that's not going to happen because you won't lose life due to the refresh. But to enter to give negative 10,000 is still a very, very strong ability on its own. So this is what the core I would be using if I was going to use the actual deck itself. And that's it. That's the tribal cores that are currently available in Wixoss. Feel free to run these on your own locals just to mess around. I often like running the tribal cores just to have something to be kicking around on the side when I want to play a little less competitively or I want to try to go for a shock value. Sometimes people don't read the cards that are in front of it, and you can take advantage of that. They don't know what to expect against something. So you can, even though some of these might not be more powerful decks because they're not well-known decks, you'll be able to take advantage of that.